Thank you, that's lovely. Wow, there's so many of you. It's amazing. Yeah, so as Penny says, I do quite a few things. I'm an artist and a writer and a journalist, as well as working for Sight Gallery. And I'm going to mostly be talking, as it's equality themed this month, I'm going to be trying to focus on some thoughts around that. So, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm doing for Sight Gallery, for those of you who are here in connection to that, I do these events called Sight Sessions, which are every month, although we're probably taking a break over the summer. And really they're a way for me, I suppose, and Sight Gallery to bring together the art, science, technology world, but also kind of in connection to philosophy and other big themes that we think are interesting and relevant and current. So we had the first one on the left, your right, was about science and the truth and art and how they connect. So we had Simon Ings is the culture editor at New Scientist. He came up from London, and Kate Genevieve came up from Brighton. She's an artist you may know who does a lot of stuff with virtual reality and the truth of the body and things like that. And Sean's a philosopher who came over from Ireland. And then we had a more Sheffield-focused one about economics called The New Economy, and about the way that art and money work together, and that was really fun as well. So usually a kind of talks and then a discussion afterwards to really, on the sort of subject of equality, I suppose, really bring together the public and the speaker, and or the audience and the speaker, and not have such a hierarchical kind of distinction, so that everybody can feel that they're being heard, really, which is what this talk's all about, actually. Another thing that I do is I make weird experiences which usually have kind of speculative science and technology themes in them. So, for example, the big blue thing is a life extension booth, which I made for the British Science Festival and the Brighton Digital Festival in 2015, and it's a sort of a meditative experience where you kind of upload your consciousness to the digital realm. By the end of it, it only takes 10 minutes. Who knew it'd be so straightforward? But there you go. And there were things that you have to do inside the box, like you basically watch a video and then you have to do creative tasks, including writing your regrets down and blowing up a balloon and releasing it out the side, where the nanotechnology will lift your regrets away and clear your conscience for the rest of your life. And of course they were just sat there as this kind of graveyard of regrets that we had. So that was at the Brighton Digital Festival, which was great fun. And then I kind of make collaborative experiences and publications. So I created a magazine on this art, science, technology, philosophy, speculation, humour stuff for about 3 years. And it was a quarterly thing called Hack Circus. And actually that's partly why I'm so involved with Sight Gallery, because they've been very supportive of Hack Circus. And each issue had an event to launch it, or most of them did, not all of them. And the events became increasingly weird and immersive as well. That was Tanya leading a sort of time travel meditation for the time travel themed one. And I really want to get away from the culture of sort of science events or science and technology events having to be a certain way, or for certain kinds of people, or that there are kind of cultural niches already in this area, and I sort of feel like there shouldn't really be any rules, and that it can be quite playful and open to a lot more people than it generally is. So those are the main things that I've been doing. I also did, and Greg was just asked about this, I did a residency, I do artist residencies, and I did one last year for a company called Rambert, who are a leading contemporary dance company in the UK. And as a result of that residency, I was invited to contribute to an exhibition at the Lowry in Salford last year, which finished this February. And I had this room which was immersive, I say immersive, just video really, but it was sound and video, and it was involving film that I'd made of the dancers, some of which was with thermal video. And again, you want to talk about equality, I was thinking a lot about who would experience it and how they would experience it. And I really wanted to have this one, actually. This is a pool, which I filmed from above a swimming pool up a step ladder and leant over, which was great fun. And I really wanted it to be quite kind of high up, so you felt like you were looking into sort of a font. And then I thought, well, if you're small or in a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to access that very well. So I kind of designed it around thinking about people of different heights and different eye levels and things like that. Anyway, that was great. I enjoyed doing that very much. So I suppose on to the equality stuff. One of the first things I learned growing up was that life isn't fair. I learned this both through experiencing things that happened to me as a child, but I also learned it literally through my dad saying it all the time. To us usually, because he was a bastard. He wasn't a bastard, I just realised he's being filmed. No, not at all. But I've grown to realise that life isn't fair can actually be a bit of an excuse to give up or not to try. And my obsession with making events and publications over the years has taught me that we really can help out our corner every day for free by doing tiny things, and we can kind of make things a lot more fair like that way. All we need to do is kind of energise ourselves to do the things that we already instinctively want to do. Every time we talk about someone positively, and actually to some extent even every time we think about someone positively, we're helping to lift them up in the world, we're doing something good for them. And I can't stress this enough. I see it on Twitter all the time. I just think, if you have a chance to, it's stupid things like, if you have a chance to retweet someone rather than fave them, do that. And nowadays, of course, on Twitter it doesn't make much difference because they post all your faves publicly anyway, but that kind of thing, like little tiny gestures, it helps so much. And it's free and it costs you nothing. So as an artist and curator, I create events, experiences and publications. The contributors I usually use are not known names, they're not really famous people usually. And my shows are deliberately a combination of audience and speakers, where everyone is being pushed out of their comfort zone. So speakers might have to sing, audience members might be suddenly challenged to make something like a poem or operate a puppet. It's happened in the live extension booth as well. So my projects are silly and strange and often quite uncomfortable because they're designed to be levelers in this way. Take out these kind of artificial power boundaries and actually sometimes reposition them for, it can be quite interesting and entertaining to do that. So my hope is that they give people fresh context, I suppose, the chance to see themselves in new ways and give them new opportunities to be heard as well. I'm addicted to making things like this because there's actually no greater honour than giving someone a voice. In an environment where everyone has to shut up, like you are now, and listen to them, whether that's in print or in a room in front of a crowd. I can't stress how easy it is to give people a platform, and yet it's more powerful than you can imagine. You only need to reach one person who really hears you, and your voice and your stories will travel on with them in the world. I like to think of it as rolls of the dice. So I'm going to give you a talk about two related things, giving other people chances and also giving yourself chances. So, how to get chances? Do what you always did. This comes up a lot, and I think maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but I find it works quite well for me, and I know it works for some other people. It's easy to forget who we were before we had anything. Before we had any material stuff or labels or history or qualifications or any kind of social identifiers or baggage that told us what we were. Because before other people started to tell us what we were instinctive and improvisational. We were kind of the truest self, if you see what I mean. And those impulses are still there, I think, driving us deep down. They don't need anything external to work, they're still there. And I think it's useful to look back at the beginning of our journey to get a clear, uncluttered picture of what these internal resources might really be. I'll explain what I mean. In some ways, I didn't have the best start in life. When I was growing up, we moved house a lot. By the time I turned 21, I think I'd lived in more than 20 places. I've often felt quite sad and confused about this over the years, but I suspect it's actually forced me to find ways to connect with people quite quickly. So what was it that I always did? Well, I think I created situations in which people could get involved with a common vision. So we would all kind of converge on something. And that was a way of bringing people together quite nicely. When I was about 8 years old, my parents didn't have much money, and my family lived in a caravan exactly like this one. Actually, that one's a bit nicer than the one we lived in. Looking at it, it didn't have flowers and stuff. Certainly didn't have a table and chairs outside. And the only entertainment available, we lived on a campsite as well, in case that wasn't classy enough for you. The only entertainment available was a games room on the campsite, and in the games room was I remember a dartboard, which I wasn't very good at because I was quite young, and a table that was covered in stacks of comics. And they were all, the older people in the room might remember the sort of Whizzer and Chips Buster Big Comic Monthly era of comics. This is what I'm talking about. Not cool comics, nothing like, Sandman or Warren Ellis or anything. It was kids' comics, and they were funny, and they were colourful and amazing and exciting, and they were all we had. That's to represent a stack of comics, but most of them actually weren't manuals. They were literally like the sort of the 8p ones. So, bearing in mind I wasn't going to school at this time and wasn't meeting many other kids, my main kind of media influence, if you like, was comics. So what I did was make them. I copied them and I made my own, and just kind of talk you through what's there. This one, if you see I don't know why I still have these. This is the only thing I've got left of my comic era. These two pictures. The black square there is from a strip called the Starship Winner Prize. These are from Cosmic Comic, by the way, if you're a collector. Cosmic Comic, and the Starship Winner Prize went on to become an audio series as well. I recorded it onto tape, a whole epic story about that. And then behind it you've got Funky Fred, who some would say was just a direct rip-off of my brother's comic strip Punky Pete, but clearly Funky Fred was more funky than Punky Pete. And he had sunglasses on as well, which I think may have been a nod to the funk era, I don't know. But obviously I didn't know anyone, so these things, and you see a lot of them have things like send in this or enter this competition. No one else ever read them. So what I had was an imaginary audience, like some kids have imaginary friends. I made things for imaginary audiences at that age. I also had themed parties. At the bottom left is a birthday party. I don't know how old I was there, I suppose about 8. And I insisted on having a fancy dress party. I always had themed parties going right through to my teenage years. Always kind of came out the best as well. Like I would never really go to town with the costumes and stuff. I'd always insist everyone else did. But I never wanted to humiliate myself too much. So themed parties and comics were the thing. And audio, made lots of tapes and stuff. And I always invented games and made up jokes. And I worried about money a lot. That never really went away, still hasn't. So, crashing on 30 plus years, things haven't changed that much, to be honest. I'm still, I'm still making things, making magazines, comics and audio. I'm still creating things for imaginary audiences, by which I mean I don't really think about who it is that I'm doing it for. I just think if I like it, it's quite likely other people will. And I sort of have a feel for it now. And I suppose it's not imaginary at this point because I kind of know who they are, but it still feels like they are imaginary. I've had some game books and joke books published. I still throw weird parties. These days they cost £20 and it might be happening under a pub in London, but it's effectively the same thing. And I definitely still worry about money. So I suppose in terms of equality, the best thing you can do is kind of know what your manifesto is, or know what your kind of your direction is in life, and by doing that and having those kind of touchstones, then you make better choices for other people, and you get this feedback loop going on. You can find your set of your sale or whatever, I think, by looking back to your formative years in some ways. Like that certainly works for me. Look at the things that you always did, as I said. There are other ways, but I think this works for a lot of people. Only by setting your sail like this do you have the chance to chart your own unique path in life. And it's so important to have a principle, code or belief that you've always relied on, because that's the thing that no one else can do. No one can replace that. It makes you unique and you bring it to everything that you do. Yeah, so I think there's something about giving that's important generally, and that I suppose I see through various things that I do. I think we're quite jealous in the way that we guard our own experiences, and we're encouraged to be these days by social media and by the way that the world is very focused on defending your selfhood in some way, selfies and self-promotion, self-protection, and actually I don't think we're as precious and vulnerable as we maybe think we are. It's not going to go anywhere if we don't constantly attend to it, if you see what I mean. Because we're so guarded like this, then we sort of think that the less we have, the less we can give, and then so we don't give it very much, and then we don't get very much back, and the cycle continues, and we hoard memories, and we make bucket lists, which are effectively just sort of a curated, special collection of personal experiences that are unique to us, that die when we do, and to me that seems just completely irrational. So we roll this dice for ourselves in our anxiety and loneliness, as if we're the only person playing this game. Derrida says that gifts are actually inherently a selfish thing, that they're caught up in this economic exchange, because every time you give, you're already responding to a previous gift, and there's this kind of ongoing cycle that you kind of expect something back. If you're with gifts, it's very difficult, it's philosophically very difficult to be a giver. But actually, he also says that the only true gift is a sort of irrational one, so it's a gift from a moment of madness or a gift of excess. The only way to break this sort of cycle of selfishness is to give more than you actually can. And so the true gift comes from a place of excessive generosity or madness in Derrida's terms. And there is actually a madness about giving other people rolls of the dice and constantly offering this thing to other people that you, especially if you feel that you need it yourself, because you feel that you are, unequal, if you like, or you feel that the odds are stacked against you. But in reality, the biggest gains come from the biggest gambles, and we actually must roll the dice for people from whom we ask nothing in return, even their identities. So we have to make things for audiences that we don't need to know. That's how I feel, that you need to expect and ask nothing of them. You don't even need to know who they are. Audiences who might, like the audience of Cosmic Comic, not exist for 30 years and then suddenly turn up in a room in Sheffield on a Friday morning in late July to read Starship, win a prize with me. But we have to liberate our ideas from our own heads, and transmitting a meaningful moment into another's head will allow your legacy to take care of itself, actually, so communicate. But more importantly, will actually increase the amount of goodwill in the world. And I really think it's not really any more complicated than that when it comes to equality. Maybe I'm wrong. And that's my stuff. So thanks very much. Cheers.